I know that the iPhone 8 is coming out next year, but really need a phone badly. I'm thinking about buying an iPhone 7 when the new iPhone comes to the market because it will be much cheaper than today's price. What determinant of demand does this suggest?
Exactly. Change in consumer price expectations makes sense, and it is right choice.
Assuming the economy is starting at the natural rate of output and everything else held constant, the effect of dash in aggregate dash is a rise in both inflation and output in the short run, but in the long run the only effect is a rise in inflation.
Well done. An increased demand is the right choice. Takis have been taking the market by storm. Everyone and their mom wants in on selling this delicious treats. Companies that never thought about selling Takis-like products are now selling their version of a hot chip. What supply factor is this?
Bravo! Change in number of sellers in the market is the answer.
The sellers of Twinkies also sell healthy foods. With all the health regulations we have now, the sellers of Twinkies want to sell more healthy foods. The supply of Twinkies will decrease. What supply factor does this best relate to?
Smart pick. Change in profit opportunities producing other products is the correct choice.
A brand new machine cooks, cleans, and never messes up a fast food order. This means we can sell more fast food than ever before, leading to producers cutting cost of fast food. Which supply factor does this most likely relate to? Correct response. Change in technology is the most accurate answer. Labor costs are rising through the roof. Minimum wages are now at $25 an hour. This means even the basic item will need to cost more to keep up with rising costs. What determinant of supply does this most relate to? Valid point. Change in cost of factors of production is true. McDonald's is having a special on their Big Mac purchases this week. Every Big Mac is $3 cheaper. When burger prices go down, this means you can buy more fries and a drink. What demand factor does this relate to? Good job. Your answer change in price of complementary good works well here. According to aggregate demand and supply analysis, the rising oil prices coupled with the global financial crisis in 2007-2008 caused the unemployment rate to dash and the level of real aggregate output to dash. Strong choice. Increase, decrease is the right answer. When the supply of a product or service goes up and the demand stays the same, the price will typically do what? Correct. Fall is the right answer. The government has put a ban on all items that are unhealthy. No store can legally sell soda over 24 ounces. The supply of anything over 24 ounces becomes non-existent. What supply factor is this? Clear logic. Your choice government action is sound and 100% true. I foresee gas prices rising tremendously in the next summer. I, as a gas supplier, want to cut my supply now so gas prices continue to rise. What supply factor does this best relate to? Nice work. You chose change in producers' price expectations, and it is correct. When the demand for a product or service is higher than the supply, this causes what? You chose shortage, and it is correct. The desire or willingness a consumer has to purchase a good or a service is called. Nice selection. Demand is the correct and valid answer. Oreo cookies are now extremely expensive to purchase. Instead of buying Oreo cookies, I now want to buy Chips Ahoy! What determinant of demand does this likely fall under?
Excellent choice. Change in price of substitute good is the right answer.
Porterville, California is now a major immigration center for Russians. Over 10,000 Russians are living in Porterville now! What demand does this determine?
Great thinking. Change in number of consumers in the market is the right choice.
Factors that cause the supply or demand to change are called?
You got it? Your choice shifter is right.
If workers demand and receive higher real wages, the cost of production dash, and the short-run aggregate supply curve shifts dash.
Smart move. Rises leftward is an accurate answer.
Jennifer Lopez is seen wearing a new short and sleek dress. People now want this dress. Which demand determinant is this most likely to fall under?
Sharp thinking. Change in consumer tastes is the right choice.
The government is giving every individual 18 and above an extra $1,040 this year. What determinant of demand does this likely fall under?
Nicely done. Change in consumer income is a solid answer.
The position of a supply curve will change following a change in one or more of the determinants of supply. Keeping price constant is known as.
On track. Shift in supply is the correct answer.
Everything else held constant. When output is dash, the natural rate level, wages will begin to dash, increasing short-run aggregate supply.
Good thinking. Below, fall is the right answer.
The quantity of a good or service that producers are able and willing to offer for sale at a specified price in a given period of time is.
Well picked. Supply is the correct answer.
A temporary negative supply shock dash real interest rates and dash output in the short run. Thereby its effect on stock prices is dash.
Right choice. Raises, lowers, negative is the best answer.
When the position of the demand curve will shift to the left or right following a change in determinant of demand is called as.
Well reasoned. Shift in demand is the correct choice.
What does this curve represent? Solid response.
Supply is a valid choice.
The Phillips curve indicates that when the labor market is dash, production costs will dash and aggregate supply increases.
You're right. Easy. Fall is the correct answer.
The price of coffee beans decreases significantly. How will this impact the supply side of the market for coffee beans?
Excellent. Supply will not change, but quantity supplied will decrease is a brilliant choice.
When quantity demanded of a commodity changes due to a change in its price, keeping other factors constant is known as.
Great job. Movement along the demand curve is the accurate answer.
According to aggregate demand and supply analysis, America's involvement in the Vietnam War had the effect of.
Perfect. Increasing aggregate output, lowering unemployment, and raising the inflation is the correct choice.
What happens to equilibrium price and quantity when both demand and supply curves shift to the right?
Right again. Equilibrium price rises and quantity increases is a valid answer.
If the price elasticity coefficient of the demand curve for paper clips is equal to 1, demand is.
Great job. Unit elastic is the accurate answer. Demand curve remain the same. Only shift in equilibrium point due to change in prices is known as.
Nicely done. Movement along the demand curve is a solid answer. What is the relationship between different markets where one product complements another? Nice work. You chose joint demand, and it is correct.
Everything else held constant, an autonomous monetary policy easing dash aggregate dash. Good job. Your answer increases. Demand works well here.
Dash flexible wages and prices imply that the short-run aggregate supply curve is dash.
Correct. More. Steeper is the right answer.
Which of the following is not a component of aggregate demand in a two-sector economy?
Excellent. Government expenditure is a brilliant choice. A rightward shift in demand curve parallel to the original demand curve is known as.
Solid response. Increase in demand is a valid choice.
What is the effect of an improvement in technology on the cost of producing cars?
Sharp thinking. Shifts the supply curve to the right is the right choice.
The amount of a good producers are willing and able to sell at a specific price.
You got it. Your choice quantities supplied is right. What happens if the price in the market is higher than the equilibrium price? Bravo! Excess supply is the answer.
For the law of demand, as price rises, what happens to quantity demanded?
You're right. It goes down is the correct answer. For the law of supply, as price rises, what happens to quantity supplied?
Well done. It goes up is the right choice. Expansion or a contraction in demand remains along the dash demand curve.
Perfect. Same is the correct choice.
The willingness and ability to sell something in a given time period. Excellent choice. Supply is the right answer. What is the effect of an increase in incomes on the demand for cars?
Nice selection. Shifts the demand curve to the right is the correct and valid answer. What is the term for a situation of excess supply or excess demand? Valid point. Market disequilibrium is true.
What happens when there is a decrease in supply of a product? Correct response. Rise in price and contraction in demand is the most accurate answer. A group of buyer and sellers of a particular good or service.
Right again. Market is a valid answer.
What is the result of an increase in demand for a product? You chose rise in price and extension in supply. And it is correct.
Downward movement along the same demand curve is known as. Smart pick. Expansion in demand is the correct choice.
Parallel shifting of original demand curve is called as. Clear logic. Your choice shift in demand is sound and 100% true.
The amount of goods or services available is called.
Well reasoned. Supply is the correct choice. Is this true or false price high or supply high? Good thinking. True is the right answer.
State true or false price high or demand high. Well picked. False is the correct answer. Aggregate supply and dash are always equal.
Right choice. National income is the best answer.
What is the meaning of market equilibrium? Exactly. A state where demand and supply are equal makes sense, and it is right choice. This part of the market determines demand. Strong choice. Bias is the right answer. Nature of demand curve is dash. On track. Left to right downward is the correct answer. Market demand is obtained by smart move. Horizontal summation of individual demand is an accurate answer. For a given good, the great thinking. Demand curve is positively sloped is the right choice. Law of demand is dash. You're right. Inverse relationship between price and quantity is the correct answer. How you will get all these quiz questions in PDF books format. Sharp thinking. Contact Narayan Changda is the right choice.